Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast, where personal growth simply isn't enough. I'm your host, Mark Cordone, a positive psychology coach, a do-gooder from the island of misfit toys who founded the Joy Revolution. Each week I'll wrap with an extraordinary guest doing extraordinary things through their own revolutionary work to talk about the ups, downs, and all-arounds of life. It's my mission to provoke and empower you through increased joy and inspire you to spark your own revolution to change history for the better. Welcome to the most serious happiness podcast in this multiverse. Welcome to the Golden Mike podcast. All right, what is shaking, Golden Mike, with your boy Mark Cordone. I am here today with Sophie Remolde, also known as Lobsterbird, as long as I've known her. I don't even know how to put into words what these roles that you play are, but like a person who's led pilgrimages, written 2 books. I love Level Up, by the way. And by the way, all of these are in the speaker notes. That's right. The sky is falling. And also at the same time, there's you just finished the Speaker Sudair. And so that's just like one of a lot of things that Lobsterbird does. Sophie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. May I refer to you as Wildflower from here on out?
Absolutely.
It almost seemed like this wasn't going to happen today, and my first thought was, but I put on my best Wildflower shirt for you for your coming out party, and you're trying to cancel it? I'm here. You're queer. Congratulations.
Thank you. Are you digging this? I don't even feel like the same Mark anymore. There's such an energy release when you cut, like when you buzz your head.
Well, there is. We store so much energy in our hair, actually. So when we get rid of it, it's really like you're releasing karma. Like the Buddhist monks, they often, when they're doing purification rites and karma releasing rites, they will cut a piece of hair as part of the ceremony and add that and offer it to the Buddhas. So literally, like you're releasing tons of karma. So good job.
Buddha took it all, man. Yeah. Buddha, take it.
Now you look like Buddha. So.
I literally look like a laughing Buddha right now. Thank you for reminding our listeners that I look like a Buddha right now. Buddhas are beautiful. Buddhas are beautiful, baby.
I mean, squad goals. That's
exactly.
Like it's enlightenment or bust at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Sophie, you've been on the live show, the Golden Mike live show a couple times. And I don't know if you can tell, but this is a little different format that we have here. We're going to be talking about your life. We're going to be talking about what the hell's going on right now, and I think from there, what we've done best is we just talk. We just talk and see and love on each other and see what comes from that, right? I did do a little bit of homework on you, so I omitted the part where you killed the person in the streets of Philadelphia just to watch them die.
I wanted to tell that part of the story. Stop trying to censor me.
Remember, I'm still the privileged man, so I get to control the narrative. But I want to talk about a whole lot of things, and especially your life, because I think so many people see you as this sprite, this person of wisdom and creativity, and you do have, even in your name, you do have very mindful ways of putting in your own story, but almost telling it in metaphor. And so today I want to talk about let's tease out those metaphors and let's talk about what were some of the exact moments that made you the Lobsterbird who you are today. Is that cool?
Let's do it.
Yeah, well, let's take it all back. I know that I knew that you grew up in a whimsical land, if you may, if we may say, by trees and by sea, otherwise known as South Jersey. Uh, and, and
Don't diminish it, man. It's magical here.
and also, now, was that South Jersey in the Speakers Who Dare?
Yeah, and wasn't it freaking magical?
It was freaking magical. It was freaking awesome. It was wild.
Yeah, New Jersey gets a really bad rep, but that's like a very small part of my mission. Actually, sorry, the smallest part of my mission is to represent. Because actually, where I'm from, the house where I grew up is on the lands bordering the New Jersey Pine Barrens, and that's known for where the Jersey Devil lives. So there's already like tons of lore, but it's because there's so much spirit in these woods. And I literally grew up running around barefoot and playing with the fae, like literally, like there's like magical beings in that forest. And that's how I grew up on one hand. And then we're like minutes away from the ocean on the other hand. I'm going to tell it. Because awesome. I'm from Long Beach Island, and everyone's always like, yeah, I know where that is. And I'm like, no, it's not Long Beach, California. It's not Long Island, New York. It's Long Beach Island. And it's a little 18-mile island off the coast of New Jersey. And it's magical. There's a lighthouse there. And it's like one of the nicest beaches in the country. And it's one of my favorite places in the world because it's so clean and it's safe. And again, there's like a whimsy there that you don't find in many other places. So that's where I grew up.
That's really awesome because, you know, when I think nowadays when we ask you where home is, you know, I don't necessarily think about where you grow up. It's almost like you're this sort of like, yeah, the sky is falling. That's the name of the episode. Okay, guys, you'll you know, but you know, there's this whimsy, not this whimsy, but there's this part of you that is like, well, I'm a sojourner. I'm on permanent pilgrimage, baby. You know, so like, how much do you still like call that home? Like your respite, your you know, the place you can come to at any point. Like, how much does it still feel like that?
Well, it's interesting because home is a word that, especially as an artist, it was so much of the crux of what I explore is what is home, right? And so usually, like you said, when people ask me where I live, I say I don't, or I say here now, or I say I've been traveling full time for the past 5 years. I'm on a continual pilgrimage. I don't live here. And I'm here now in South Jersey because I was actually in India a few months ago, and my soul gave me the memo to go home early. And my human me was like, I don't want to. The Dalai Lama's coming in a couple of weeks. And like, I've always wanted to see His Holiness. And like, my teacher's here, and I could be lighting candles and butter lamps and like praying and meditating. And that's much more sexy than going and, you know, sitting with my parents. Like, why? You know, why? And now, funny enough, given what's going on right now, it's actually like the place that I need to be for so many reasons. So actually, I'm transmitting from you right here. But I don't often think of it as home. However, I'll call it home. But what's funny about that is there's like a bunch of places that I call home. You know, Colorado is my home, and I have so many different homes around the world. And, you know, so for me, this is like not separate from being a lobsterbird, because this is where the lobsterbird landed for the first time ever on this earth plane. But that's, you know, what being a lobsterbird really is all about, is about finding the home that's wherever we go, right? Because it's always within us. And I know that might sound corny, but it's actually true. And so just to also reference, if I may I continue on while we're remixing, because if people are hearing what's going on, right, there's something going on in your roof, like, which is why I'm
taking my whole roof off this week.
Oh, okay. So you decided that the sky is falling.
Literally, the sky is falling. And then they feel like, Dun, 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 dun. Like they
Right.
keep tapping like that.
I know, it's like, ta-da! Okay,
Yeah.
great, Lobsterbird's here. But you know what keeps this kept running through my head, so I'm just gonna share it with you. It's totally weird.
Yeah.
I was just thinking because now you're emerging as the wildflower,
Yeah.
right? And I was thinking about that, like Chicken Little says the sky is falling, right? And so I was thinking like, oh yeah, like I'm kind of Chicken Little Lobsterbird here. And like talking to the wildflower about, you know, the earth falling apart. And then I started to think about, you'll probably know this, but is it Aerosmith that does this song? And they're like, Chicken Little said the sky is falling. If it was, would you still come crawling back again? I'll bet you would, my friend. Again and again and again. Right? Like,
Okay, now I know that you're from Jersey.
so I wrapped it all back in.
Amazing. So yeah, so here we are. This sort of this Lobsterbird, this hybrid. That's the inception. Jersey is the inception of Lobsterbird, right? And I know I've had the privilege of hearing this story a million times, and it doesn't get old every time I hear it. It actually gets better every time I hear it. It's like one of my favorite songs, which is
Like
not an Aerosmith song. It's not, which is not an Aerosmith song. But why Lobsterbird?
So you want the story, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Well, here we go. Like
we're taking requests today.
Well, so I used to work at a karaoke bar in New York City.
Amazing.
And I do take song requests, and this song request is the Lobsterbird song. And so it actually starts back in that karaoke bar back in New York City, where I lived for many years, and I was a multimedia artist and performer. And it actually starts here, right? And the reason I sang that song to you, right, is it's all about like, we're coming back again and again. And the thing about home, right? I'm doing a preface. This is the preface to the story. The thing about home, and I often talk about the hero's journey, is we have to return home to understand who it is that we are, right? We have to return to our roots to understand where we came from and what makes us us. And at the same time, we return to that place again and again so we can help dismantle the status quo, right? We have to leave we leave because there's something that's fundamentally, not free.
Absolutely.
About, right, where we grew up. And so it's both a part of us and then we leave it. We kind of separate from it, right? And the hope is that we return, to understand it in a new way. And so that's what this story is about, because as I said, I grew up here by the sea and the trees, right? Like frolicking in this hybrid situation. And along with the hybrid situation that I was born in is that I was born half of an Asian woman and half of a white dude, as I call them. My lineage is complicated and I will not get into it. But Asian mother, American father. And I grew up in this extremely non-diverse small town in New Jersey. And so, we were the Asian people. And we only half. Yeah. So you can imagine that, right, as part of the context for where I grew up. So I just didn't really understand a lot of the time what that part of me was, but I was always fundamentally different.
Okay.
And that showed up in a lot of different ways, and that was hard growing up. And so, for a long time I just kind of like dismissed that part of me, like, because I'm a really great shapeshifter and chameleon. And so I was just like, white as far as I was concerned, and there was like some weird stuff like that indicated that I wasn't, but I just moved with it. And so it wasn't until I went into college, to a very diverse college, Rutgers University, and people started saying, where are you from? I was like, New Jersey, where we are. Where are you from? And I didn't understand what that question was, and I kept getting asked again and again and again. And finally I understood that they meant, like, because like when that New Jersey was not a sufficient answer, they would say
it's not sufficient.
right? Yeah, it's like, no, but I mean, what are you?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, human? Like, what are you? Right? A lot of us are used to, right, this microaggression stuff that happens. And back
Right.
then, we didn't have the internet like we do now, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't have a context for talking about it or understanding it. So then there was, what are you? And finally, they'd say, like, no, like, where are your parents from? And then I was like, oh, they're like trying to understand what my ethnic background is.
Yeah.
Right. So that, I mean, it was really for me like revealing, because I honestly didn't think, like, although I knew there was something different, I just shelved like that entire half of my psyche basically
Yeah.
for most of my life. Right. So anyway, born a hybrid right here on this planet. And then when I went to New York City, and, started being an artist and started working in all this different media and doing all these different things, I went to grad school. And so it was in grad school that I was working in this karaoke bar. And my friends owned one part of the story is right. So right before I get into grad school, I was mostly an actor. I was in acting school at the time. And one of my friends said, one of my friends is doing this project and she's looking for people. I really think you should do it. And it's called Fishbird. That sounds interesting. What could that be about? So it turns out the Fishbird are the Hapa people from Hawaii, who are generally half Japanese and half American. And they have a really hard time still in Japan, because there's still a lot of, prejudice, and they kind of feel like they don't quite fit in either world.
Right.
And so a fish and a bird could love each other, right, Cordon?
Of course, a fish and a bird could love each other.
Right, but then where would they live?
Some third space, not in water and not in air.
Yeah, and that third space is called a fish bird to them, right? And it's, I think, that space in their hearts where they can live. That's what I think now, years later. But so here I am in New York City now, working in the karaoke bar. And my friends own this bar, and they're obsessed with the holidays, like obsessed. Like their Christmas party is like the biggest thing in the world. And like the whole bar transforms every holiday. St. Patty's Day, forget it. They're the O'Reillys. St. Patty's Day is like, you're covered in green. You're like turned green. And here it is, and it's like the night or two before Halloween, and I'm scheduled to bartend, and I was so busy. I'm like working in the theater, I'm like working in the bar, like all my whole life, like it just all the time, New York City. And I'm after work, and my friend Tom came into the bar that night, and he's like, want to get a drink? And I was like, sure. So we're at like a different bar down the street. And I was like, it's tomorrow's Halloween. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because there's like no costumes. It's New York City. Like everything's bought, or it's going to be like $10,000 for a costume. Like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, well, do you want to be a lobster? And I was like, yeah, obviously. Like, how can I do that? He was like, well, I just so happen to have a lobster costume, and like I'll just drop it off for you tomorrow, and you can totally like use it. And I was like, that's amazing, thank you. So I put on this like gigantor men's lobster costume, which has giant claws that like, are like 10 times the size of my hand. And it has 8 like arms that move as I move my arms. And here I am at Planet Rose behind the bar. And I'm like knocking over all of the bottles and all the like, as I move throughout the bar space. And I also can't hold bottles or glasses because the size of my claws. And
now, were the claws functional so you could at least like pop tops of them?
Not really. There was like this weird hole in between the claw space.
Oh my god.
So sometimes I would kind of take my little paw and like poke it out the hole and lift it up.
Oh my god.
Right?
That's amazing.
It was absolutely ridiculous, to the point where everyone loved it, right? And and so they started dedicating karaoke songs to the lobster, who was having a very difficult time.
The rock lobster, like what else?
Under the Sea.
Under the Sea.
Octopus's Garden. Like, you name it, sea themed. It was sung. Of course, the Little Mermaid. But then they ran out of songs, right? These theme songs. So what they did is they just changed the lyrics. So then Hell is for Children became Hell is for Lobsters. It was like the most fun, weird thing ever, right? And so I kind of thought that it was like a one night jam, right? My one hit wonder.
Yeah.
But then turns out I started to like get some phone calls from people. And so like my friends were like, hey, can you come do this performance in Union Square? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. And they'd be like, but can you come as the lobster?
No way. I think this is a side I haven't heard yet that you were.
And I was a little like, oh, okay, humbled. Like, I don't know like what you're really asking for here. But I'm gonna go with it. Right? I'm gonna go with it and see what happens. And then films were made, and then invited out to San Francisco.
Oh my god!
All as the lobster. So the lobster became this kind of performance persona of mine that I just didn't really think that much about until I was in grad school. And I'm in grad school and I needed to start a blog to document my outside performances as like outside credit is what I was doing. And so I started this blog and I was like, well, what am I going to name it? Right. And I was thinking about how everything I was doing was essentially bringing things together that didn't seem like they belong, right? That didn't seem like they could coexist. So for example, art and science, technology and spirituality,
right.
Performing arts, visual arts, everything that seems like these are different things. I was bringing them together into these huge multimedia experiences. And so I started to think about that. And I was thinking about the Fishbird project. And it occurred to me that in every single way, I'm not a fishbird. I'm a lobster.
and it's almost as if like so much of what you've been doing has been talking about like the brilliant paradoxes of life that we think make things impossible, right? But like really how much they were like they are a perfect fit for each other. It's not either or, it's yes and, right? It's not one side or another or us versus them. It's always togetherness and oneness. And so when I think the normal human processing system would say, no, that can't happen. You need to put one thing in this drawer and one thing in this drawer, and that's how it coexists. Like you can't have a spork. You can't have a spoon and a fork. You have to have a spoon or a fork, right? And I think that's what I've loved about that. I have to get a picture of you in the Lobsterbird costume. We're putting it up. We're putting it up.
Thanks. If you really did your homework, you would have found this on here.
I'm gonna look now.
Well, yeah, but can I also just say that this was really interesting for me because I faced those boxes all my life. So like going back to the college days, like when I was applying for college, it was like, so check your ethnicity. And I'd be like, Caucasian, Asian American, Caucasian. I mean, which box do I check? There wasn't sometimes another, and then it was like, do I just check 2 boxes and like see what happens? Or like, do I have to decide one, right? Like there was always something trying to put me in a box that I just like never quite fit in, and so it translates to now because for me then, through my art making experience, I realized by bringing all these seemingly disparate things together, what they did was literally like created new worlds for people to enter into. So these different like performative experiences that I was creating that brought together all these things were like these worlds that people never experienced before.
Sure, absolutely.
They would walk in there and it would change their perception of what was possible. Right?
Sure.
And
absolutely.
So from making like actual art, that people could experience, then it moved and shifted, and like fast forward the story.
Just like your pilgrimages.
Right. We're going to quantum leap and we can go back if you want to fill anything in. But, fast forward to the end is now, like you said, I don't even know how to call what it is that I do, whether it's like coaching, healing, guiding people on pilgrimages, helping build businesses. But really, like, what I'm doing is helping people really embody all of their multi-dimensional and multi-prismatic glory and their beingness, right? Because it is everything, like everything that we've tried to push away and deny is what the world is asking us to look at right now and reintegrate into our being. Because when we do that, and so I do that in the context of helping people understand why they came here to this planet and what the work is that they're meant to be doing on this planet, because I think that that is like one of the most powerful channels that we have, you know, to express who it is that we are. But when we do that and we bring these different, when we allow ourselves to say, no, hey world, I'm not going to listen to you for a minute, right? Yeah. And I'm going to explore this other thing, and I'm going to bring all this stuff in that anyone would say would be crazy, right? Like, it's going to, like, spork. I can't eat with a spork. I'm going to do it, right? And through that process of doing it, I'm going to realize something about the nature of freaking reality, right?
Absolutely.
Which is that when you bring these paradoxes together into a space, when you become the spaciousness for those paradoxes to coexist, they transcend altogether, and there is no separate.
Hey, it's Mark. I hope you're digging the Golden Mike podcast. If you have or are just starting your own revolution fueled by joy, there's a site I created for you. If you, like me, believe that personal growth is simply not enough, if you, like me, are committed to changing history for the better in both micro and macro ways, check out joyrevolution.com. In there, you'll find an archive of our over 200 Golden Mike Live Facebook shows, and of course, our podcast that you're currently listening to. Check out the blogs highlighting how positive psychology and joy theory apply to your everyday life. There's even some cool clips from our Joy Revolution course geared towards influencers, speakers, writers, and change agents. It's all there. Go to joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Let's get back to the episode. No, there's not at all. I mean, it's amazing. And number one is, like, I'm getting so drawn in by what you're talking about. I'm just like sitting here like a little kid, like just being like, oh, wait, I forgot I'm on an interview right now. It's so absolutely. So I want to go to you then. When was it that you discovered your, like, that you, well, actually, even before that, did you ever resist the ultimate calling, or you know, in psychology it's called listening to the daimon, the good demon, the voice, the thing that's pulling you. The more that you try to, like, cover your ears and not listen to this daimon, the louder it gets, right? Was there a time in your life where you're like, nah, I'm gonna do things this way, and then the diamond got louder and was like, no, bird.
Yeah.
You know, or was it always go with the flow with you?
Well, of course, it's a hybrid answer. Naturally. Surprise! Huzzah! But, you know, there's no surprise that, how do you say it even? Diamond? Is that how you say it?
Diamond. Daemon.
Yeah, it's closely spelled to demon, right?
Yep.
You take out the A.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that, right?
Yep.
And so the answer is yes, I have very much experienced that. And the answer is yes, I've always gone my own way, and I still experienced it. So I think this is maybe important for some people to hear, maybe kind of the most important thing I have to offer at the moment. But, you know, because I was born just naturally different, you know, like there was no hiding it. I'm also, like, I was the weird one, right? I told you, my mom growing up, there was an apple tree right outside the window, my child bedroom window. And when my mom would get mad at me, which was like every day, all the time, because hey, look, like I annoyed her because I was so freaking different when I was born. Like I was born onto this planet, and I was like, hey, everybody, I gotta tell y'all what's going on here because this world is crazy, and there's things talking to me in the backyard. And also, did you hear what the dog said? Because blah, 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 blah. And my mom would like be literally be on the telephone in the middle of the conversation, and I'd be like, I gotta tell you this thing happened, and she would like freak out. She would be like, I'm in the middle of something, and then like chase me around the house and be like, why can't you be normal? Like that. That's I just have born that way.
Did she chase you around with a slipper?
A shoe, yes. Like often because it was
Elevation moms.
the dragon mamas with their shoes.
Yeah, amazing.
I mean, mind you, she was raised in Korea and she considers herself Korean, even though that's up for debate. And so stereotypically, Korean women are very fierce. Korean mothers are very strong, and for good reason. Actually, the Koreans like helped their country gain independence. So shout out to the fierce Korean women. And also terrifying, as you mentioned, especially one who's born and it's like, hey, it's all love and light, guys. Hey, like the world's amazing. And then you're like, fire is like trying to burn me, like as I run through the house.
Wait, so tell me about this apple tree.
Right. So whenever she would get really mad at me, which was literally every day, some of the time she would say, you know, you're not even my daughter. I found you outside underneath the apple tree.
Oh my God. That's the same thing my parents told me.
Nah.
No, they didn't say under the apple tree. They said on their way to the United States, they found me on the side of a mountain. And that's why I don't look anything like them.
Yeah, me too. Like, you're not at all like us. Like, that's the only explanation. That's really funny. Well, I like that you got mountain. I was like, oh, okay. So you just found me under the tree with all
the apple tree, of course. Wait, so I mean, this sounds like a different level of hyperactivity. It's not just and by the way, I don't want to separate hyperactivity and being able to see things for what they're worth. Like being a child and seeing and basking in the glow of like just sort of the freshness and the newness of the world is amazing, right? Like I think I've spent most of my life trying to get back to that state, right? And yet the thing you're talking about is we are all light. I heard it in that rant that you said. What age was this?
Yeah, so I mean that's the crazy part. And this is an answer to your question too, because it was exactly what I'm talking about, like this way that I was being, because that I shut off for a really long time. So let's get back to that eventually. But it also went on way too long for people to be comfortable.
Okay.
Right? Because it started, like I said, I mean, I don't remember a time where it wasn't. But recently I had this, it was a few years ago, actually, when I had this astrology reading. And the astrologer said, there's like, what were you doing when you were 4? Like, I know that was a long time ago, but like, you're going to start to remember, and like whatever was happening for you at that time is going to become like critically important for you. And I was like, it's so crazy you said that, because just the other day I had this memory come back, and I swear, like I was like around 4, and I was standing in this very specific spot in the backyard that still, it's like it's always been my power spot. I can't not stop when I walk through that spot. And funny story, this I've never told before because it just happened the other day. I was walking in the backyard with my father, and we got to that spot, and he stopped and he said, I always stop at this spot and I look around and I check things out. I was like, me too, Dad. I know, me too. Like, this is like my spot. Like, and I was just like, it's not unreal, right? But so that spot, though, actually was like a portal for me when I was little. Like, when I would hit that spot, I knew it was like a threshold. And I always imagined it like a bridge to Terabithia. Like they swing on the rope and they swing into the new spot. Like, I would be on that spot. I would take it all in. And then I would like jump and I would be in another world. And like, kid you not, the memory that came back to me as I was in the woods behind my house, which is where I filmed the Speakers Who Dare thing. And I was conversing with beings of light. Like, I didn't have a word for this at the time, you know, like there is now. Like now there's people that can like, you know, talk about what this means. But I can see all this, like, and I still can. I went there the other day. I'll show you. I took a bunch of pictures. Like you can see them. Actually, they're real. Like I know this might sound crazy to some people, and that's why I shut this off for a really long time. But you can actually see them, and I actually am photographing them now because they're there. And I was talking to them and they were giving me information. And that's why I would come back and I would know things when I was little. And that like really upset the adults in the room that were like, you can't possibly know that. But I was 4, you know, or like, 7, or it kept going into my early teenage years when then I realized like, ooh, this is actually like pissing people off and making people feel weird. And so maybe I shouldn't do this anymore, right? Like not only should I not talk about it, but I totally shut down perceiving it for a very long time.
What were some of the things that they were telling you that was becoming so, you know, upsetting to other people?
The same thing as always is the truth.
Yeah, and like for example,
well, here's the thing, right? So I've been in this recovery process now for the past few years of really like tapping back into that. And so I'm in this remembering process, right? Mm-hmm. So I can't tell you I remember exactly everything they say, but part of that process, so I went to my mom and I was like, hey, Sumi. So when I was little, I was like, do you ever remember me like talking to things, you know? And she was like, oh yeah, well, you had that imaginary best friend, but it was imaginary and it lived in your closet. And I was like, okay, mm-hmm. 2 points here. Not imaginary, actually. Mm-hmm. Other one is like these friends, a plural, lived everywhere. But she was like, and I was like, so, you know, did you ever like listen to what we were talking about? And she was like, no, but you talk to them all the time, blah, 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 blah. You would sit there. Literally, that's what she said. So all she heard was blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But like all I know and all I remember was like, it was the most important stuff in the world. And so I think actually I know this. The stuff that is coming through me right now is the stuff that I actually knew when I was little because of my connection with these amazing starry beings, you know, who actually are here on this planet. And because I am one, this returns back to the apple tree, is that I used to get so upset, right? Because not nice that my mom's basically not even telling me I was adopted by choice, but that they found me.
That you were a stray.
Right? And they had no choice but to take me in, and I was annoying them. Right? Like that was pretty upsetting to me. So I spent many years that I was thinking about this the other day. I found this childhood diary also that I thought would give me some clues. It's from when I was 12 though. And I think, or maybe a little earlier, actually, maybe like 10. I thought it would give me some clues. Most of the clues were basically just about how angry I was and how much mm-hmm. despair literally I was in. Like I would take the pencil so hard on the paper writing about how I hated like everyone and life because like no one, you know, like understood. And I would take the pencil so hard that it would go through like multiple sheaves of this really thick, you know, child diary paper with its like bedazzled, you know, jeweled hearts and stars on it. Inside, it's like a rage fest.
The sprite is so rageful.
Right, because I was pissed. Because I was like, you know, everyone. And so also another thing that's really like been coming through and becoming apparent is I used to talk to animals. Right. And so I don't just mean in the way that people like talk to their pets and they're like, hey, babe, I love you. Like, that's fine, too. If you do that, that's nice. Mm-hmm. I do that, too, sometimes. But like mm-hmm. when I was little, actually, I could like hear the thoughts of animals. And it wasn't like in words. It was just like I knew what they were thinking, like via direct transmission. And I could tell people. And actually, this happened the other day because Caroline is our neighbor's horse and she lives in the backyard here. And I said to my mom, because I go and visit her every day. And I said, you know, Caroline's sick. And she was like, well, how do you know? Like, well, because she told me. Right? She's still, like, this still happens. But now I'm just like, whatever, Mom. Like, I accept who I am. But I kind of hope she never listens to this, and I also kind of hope she does, because like
Yeah.
I've always, my parents, right?
Yeah.
And all of us, right? Can't we relate to this? Our parents birthed us. They're the people in the world that we so most want to understand us, right? And
Oh
be
yeah.
proud of us
Oh
and
yeah.
love us, right?
Of course.
Because
Of
technically
course.
they birthed us or found us.
Or found us. Or found us, right? But that's
Right.
that's probably why the bedazzled pen went through so many pieces of paper. That's probably why the bedazzled pen went through so many pieces of paper, because you weren't being seen
Right,
and you weren't
exactly.
being taken seriously.
Yeah, and no one was listening. And that's the thing. And so to answer your question, what was coming through at the time was
Mhm.
like really important stuff about the state of the world. It was like also nature like coming through to be like, hey, like things are not being tended to well. Like so as much as like there was a lot of positivity and love, like for the love that I was looking for and the understanding I was looking for inside my home, I
Mhm.
found it out in nature. And so that's interesting too when you ask me about home. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that's really how it started, where my home was out in the world. And so the thing about the tree though, right, is that for a long time I was just mad about it, right? And I was like, I don't belong here. I want to leave. I want to go. I don't belong here. They're telling me I'm not even part of this family, right?
Mhm.
Now, quantum leap to the end of the story is like I'm super happy they found me out of the under the apple tree and that I'm not a part of this family. Because there's one other memory I have. My sister and I got in this huge fight. We used to fight a lot. I have one older sister. She's my best friend.
Okay.
She's like my biggest support. I would not be here right now if it weren't for her. I love her, Alicia. Shout out. But we used to fight like freaking mad cats.
Okay.
Yeah, like banging on the ceiling, banging on each other.
Really? Like
pulling hair, right? Yeah, like it was bad. And so, we got in a fight once, and I wrote her this letter. And I remember writing, like, I'm really glad I am not a part of this family. I'm glad I'm not mom's daughter, because you're right. I am nothing like you, and I'm glad. It was like, never. And I wrote this letter. It was the first time I ever realized that and ever said it. And actually, there was a tremendous amount of healing that happened
yeah,
because
yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
But now when I look at it, like I actually, and like again, I know to some people this is going to sound crazy, but I think to everyone who's listening on some level, that you are a starry being here on this
Yeah.
planet. Like you are pure energetic potential, and the way that I manifested was like a beam of light shot down like underneath that tree, and they found me there, and then they were like, oh, what the heck is that? Right? They're like, we want to love it, but also like, it's super scary because we don't know how to deal with
it. you're like one of those mogwais from the Gremlins. Like, do not feed after midnight. Do not put by water.
Well, and it's because I understood too, right? Like I understood like the tremendous amount of love and light and goodness of this planet, and basically like how we as humans were destroying it, and myself included, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
exempt just because I was hearing about it. Like so that pain I felt was like really present.
Well, you know what? I gotta say, I'm going through my sort of my emotional checklist right now, and there's a little bit of envy there. There's a little bit of envy there, and that envy is almost like for so long, and especially now, you cut your hair, you think you know something, right? But for so long, but for so right.
I've done that, and I was like,
but for so long, I was like, like the frustration that I had was like, I was a human born with no instruction manual, and like here you are, and I'm like, oh my god, she had like 20 light mentors. Like, you know what I mean? But also at the same time, like, light mentors or not, I agree with you. This was something that I talked about in Speakers Who Dare. There's always a remembrance They're always, 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 you will return to remembrance. You will, and when you're open to it, those memories of being a child, those messages that you got will come back to you, and you have a decision to move forward with it or continue what you've been doing when you shut off.
Well, can I actually take a moment here? This feels really important to take a moment and hold space for your and possibly Joe Fern's and me here. Just kidding, Joe Fern, love you. But no, really holding space for what you just said. Like, I think that's incredibly important to acknowledge, you know, because here, let me like open my curtains, what's the phrase? Throw out my laundry, dirty laundry, right? Is that I was on the other side of that, right? I envy people who were quote unquote normal, right? And didn't have to hear the things that I was hearing and see the things I was seeing, right? And be constantly told that I was a freaking weirdo, you know, my life. Like there were some people that seemed like, you know, they had it pretty easy, right? And so for me, like to be able to call that out into the space, and I encourage anyone who, you know, like here, listening, right, to just acknowledge if we've ever felt that, because if we don't, we're constantly wishing we're someone that we're not, right?
Absolutely.
And that envy energy like is really destructive actually to ourselves and to the planet. So thank you. That was really bold. See that you lose your hair and you get some, you get naked and vulnerable, exposing our demons. Well, but that's our demons, right? So can we get back to that for a second? Because it is like the gremlins, right?
Look at you, like you've got segues upon segues upon segues.
Dude, when you're multi-dimensional, you can't help it.
Bird, I love when we get together. I love it. I
do too, because you know how to roll with it, right? And so that's too, because you allowed space for your envy. Like, you know, we gave it space, it passed through you, right? Then we could just like flow, and that's all of us, right? And now we're flowing in it. So back to the demon, because the demon, not the daemon, right? The daemon, but the demon really comes out when we're not doing that, right? When we're not giving space to that energy, right? That's kind of, you know, in there and churning and unacknowledged, right? And so for me, like that also came out a lot, right? And it's also part of the daemon, which was the denial, right, of who I am. So these two things I think are inextricably connected. And so let's talk about that, because if people can understand that and how to really see ourselves, right, and to use the power of who we are, both the daemon and the demon, right? Oh man, the kind of conversations we can have and the things we can do. And all of us ultimately, I believe, do have access to 20 like guides, spirit guides, whatever, right? But it's this process. And so for me, this like short story is that there was a certain amount of time, and I will say probably, you know what, it's just coming to me now, actually, is that in middle school, so I also grew up dancing. Quick story, 30-second story. I was 2. My mother brought me to Verna's dance studio, where my sister, who was 4 years older, was enrolled in a dance class. And so we're looking through the little window, and my little like nugget body's like bumping up and down, like trying to dance with the pros. And they thought it was hysterical. And so my mom jokingly says to the illustrious Verna, who owns the studio, can she join the dance class? And Verna says, if she's potty trained, she can dance.
She's potty trained.
And I was in, just like that. So I started dancing when I was 2. And so embodiment is so important in this conversation. But in middle school, it's no coincidence that I decided I didn't want to dance anymore. And I played like every sport imaginable. Talk about being multi-prismatic, you name it. I played it. But you know, I stopped going out into nature like I used to, and I totally stopped talking about the things, you know, that I knew. And that catalyzed a whole, 20-30 year process. I don't even know how old I am. The whole process where it doesn't matter anyway. But like this whole process where I turned it off and a world of pain descended. Like literally like the movie The Gremlins. It was like that.
hope you enjoyed the Golden Mike podcast. There's more good stuff coming your way. But until the next episode, let's stay in touch, yes? Find us on Instagram as The Joy Rev, or communicate with like-minded revolutionaries in our Facebook group. Search The Joy Revolution Underground. And of course, don't forget to check out the classes, articles, blogs, and some serious fun at joyrevolution.com. That's joyrevolution.com. Now, until then, what will you do to change history for the better? Let's go out and play, shall we? Press start to begin.